All right, welcome back. We will go very soon to KwaZulu-Natal. My colleague Ayanda Mhlongo is standing by there. Remember, the ANC SG, Ace Makashula, is in Durban to resolve some of the MKMVA issues there. Lots to talk about there, as you know, with regards to what's been happening on the Twitter front as well. So we'll try to get some reaction there from Ayanda Mhlongo. Stand by for that. But I want to get to this story first of all. Kanye West has released his first official campaign video in his long shot bid to be elected US president next month, focusing on religion and families. In yesterday's video, the rapper asked supporters to vote for him as a write-in candidate. The video is the first major bid by West, formerly one of President Donald Trump's biggest celebrity supporters, to be taken as a serious contender for the White House. West's done little campaigning under his self-styled birthday party as concerns grow over his mental health.
What is America's destiny?
Rapper Kanye West debuted his first official campaign video on Monday with a focus on religion. His video featured families in prayer together and a series of nature shots.
By turning to faith, we will be the kind of nation, the kind of people God intends us to be.
His long-shot bid at the US presidential election on November 3rd was launched in July, marked with erratic statements on social media. Despite having no mathematical chance of winning, he's pushed ahead and is on the official ballot in a handful of US states. West has spent some $5.8 million on his campaign. The video was the first major bid by the rapper, formerly one of President Donald Trump's biggest celebrity supporters, and included a 10-point policy platform that ranged from policing reform to reducing student debt.
I am Kanye West, and I approve this message.
So no mathematical chance. The music mogul debuting his first official campaign video. What does this all mean with just a few weeks to go before the elections? Associate editor of Daily Maverick and retired US diplomat Brooks Spector is going to help us better understand this. Mr. Spector, welcome to the agenda.
Well, good morning. I was trying to figure out if I could rhyme that answer, but
Look,
I'm not that good at poetry. I'm sorry.
So no mathematical chance, but look, we've seen stranger things happen. So I guess the big question everybody has is, does Kanye have a shot of landing a spot in the Oval Office? And could we be saying at the end of November, First Lady Kim Kardashian?
Well, it's the stuff of a movie. The movie probably starred Eddie Murphy about 2 decades ago. Look, you have to garner votes in states all across the country. You probably need somewhere north of 65 million votes to win. Yeah. You have to win the electoral count. You have to get 270 of those. That means the votes of states totaling 270 electoral votes that are apportioned largely by population. And if you're not even listed on all of the ballots, you stand zero chance.
Right.
People tend to think that it's a race between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. But in most states, the ballot lists a bunch of other parties and candidates. There's usually, in at least some states, the Vegetarian Party, the Prohibition Party, the Peace and Freedom Party, the Socialist Worker or Worker Socialists or Liberal Worker Socialist or something of that order. But there are, in fact, a couple of normal third-party candidates as well.
Let's look at this third-party candidate. If the election is indeed tight, a third-party candidate can pose a risk, correct?
Only if they win the votes of sufficient numbers of people in a swing state so that it would matter. And the swing state, of course, as you know, is a state in which the support between Democrats and Republicans is largely balanced on a knife edge. And so the tension then becomes pushing forward in a place like Florida or Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Iowa, maybe Colorado, perhaps even Georgia, to gain enough leverage so that you gain that state's electoral votes. Now, in point of fact, in 2016, the two third and fourth party candidates probably made something of a difference, but mostly Jill Stein, who was the Green Party, and she probably drew enough votes away from Hillary Clinton that she may have cost her one or two states.
Right.
But it's not absolutely clear because you never know how many people failed to vote in the first place. So the race is really about getting more votes.
Right. So Kanye might not get enough votes to become the commander-in-chief, but talk to us about the impact he could have in battleground states. Could he get enough votes to determine the outcome of this elections between Biden and Trump? Could he skim support from Biden?
It's doubtful because this campaign, this issue, this election year seems to be all about the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, its economic repercussions, and the fact that healthcare, the quality of it or the lack of it, have become the core issues that most voters are thinking about most often when they make their choices.
Right.
The other thing to think about, of course, is there may be now about 10 million people who have already voted on the basis of those issues through mail-in ballots or advanced balloting or what do you call the other ones? Absentee ballots. And no matter what Kanye West says or does between now and November 3rd, it's not going to make any difference to people who've already voted.
Correct. Look, he definitely has name recognition. He has a huge fan base. So did Trump, by the way, in 2016. Name recognition and popular. That was the other appeal, isn't it, Mr. Spector? Trump wasn't a politician. Fast forward to 2020. Would you say that is still a major factor for the electorate if you test the temperature of views? How many Americans are still fed up with the Washington insiders and want to take a risk on an outsider?
I think more people are now fed up with Washington incompetence, and that's rather different. They didn't deal with the pandemic. They are not solving the healthcare crisis. They are not addressing racial redress in a way which matters sufficiently for voters. Kanye West was, to some degree, a project, in fact, of the Trump campaign to try to siphon off votes from Democratic candidates. So it has the texture of the effort. If we just put up a dark face on a ballot, maybe that will be enough to convince gullible African Americans to vote for somebody besides Joe Biden. And I think, on the whole, most people don't vote that way. They don't vote on the basis of the record album label.
Let's just look at Trump's appeal to black and brown voters in the United States. Recently, he delivered a speech in front of a cheering supporters at the White House. Many present there were black and Latino voters. Mr. Trump is, as you know, fond of saying that he has done more for the black community than any president in recent history. Is his appeal to black and brown voters increasing there?
If you look at the polling data, the answer is a definitive no. Go back to that event at the White House the other day. It was to a considerable degree, it was a rent-a-crowd. They paid for the accommodation and the transportation of the people who attended, and by generous estimates, it was about 2,000 people. By most people's estimates, journalists I talked to who were in Washington, it was closer to under 1,000. They all got the T-shirt. They all got a flag. Not all of them had masks. They were all bunched together, and they had hotel rooms and transportation. And that is not exactly the same as motivating large groups of voters in big cities on the basis of real as opposed to imaginary benefits. I mean, it is true. It is true that the Trump administration can claim that at the beginning of the Trump administration, they continued the economic growth that had occurred during the Obama administration, and that real wages in the black community were growing, unemployment was continuing to drop, employment was continuing to rise. That was a function of larger economic forces rather than necessarily the actual policies of the Trump administration, because at the same time, the Trump administration always talked about the economy as if it were the same as the price of the stock market. And most people don't own stocks, and so they don't measure their wealth or their economic well-being by the the prices of shares of stock that they don't own.
There's so many dynamics to this elections, as you mentioned, with regards to COVID-19, the residue of outrage following the deaths of thousands of people. What impact would that have on the elections? So we've run out of time. We've got to go, but we'll no doubt bring you back as we approach this election day, November 3rd. Thank you very much indeed for your perspective. Be well.
It's a pleasure. Take care.
All right. Associate Editor of Daily Maverick and retired U.S. diplomat Brooks Spector there. It's heating up, as you know. We will definitely get all sides of the story right here on the agenda with regards to the U.S. elections.